It's time for the Buddy Martin Show, coming your way right now, sponsored by Rensstar Medical Research.
Yes, it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking, but be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
What if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Good evening and welcome to a Monday, so you want to say Monday, it's actually a Thursday night edition of the Buddy Martin Show. The days are winding down here. Boy, does having Christmas on Tuesday screw you up or what? Tuesday is not a good day for Christmas. Can we just skip that next time it comes up on the calendar? But tonight we do have a special show with special guests. In just a moment, we'll go right to our friend Chris Doering, get his take on things in terms of the bowl games going on. 11, let's see, what we got here? We have 11 SEC teams playing in the next 6 days. 11. And maybe more depending on what happens in a couple of those other games. And it's now heating up. Big boy football is upon us. And if you can't get interested in these games, well, maybe you got a problem. I am Buddy Martin wishing a good evening to all you folks out there. David Baldolf, Roger Burns, how you doing? Kevin Zeminski, Kyle McGraw-Long, Joe Fulford, Otis McDuffie, Robin Cousin Lineberger, and Don Rutledge, my boy Donnie Rutledge, along with Paula Chanel. Just a few people tuned in for the show. And we're not going to waste a lot of time. We're getting right to it because coming up behind Chris Doering is Mark Long of the Associated Press. Plus, we got a report out of the South Bend from my buddy John Fineran, who covers the Fighting Irish for the AP. And then our buddy Terry Norvelle, College Sports Today, will join us. We'll size up these games and give you our final thoughts before the games unfold this weekend, starting tomorrow on Football Friday. So let me do this. Let me say thank you to our sponsor, Rensstar Medical Research. Rensstar Medical Research seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. I caught up with Chris Doering as he was getting ready to peel off to Charlotte, where he'll be doing some football stuff. And this is what Chris had to say. Well, football season's not quite over. Quite a bit of football left, matter of fact. And some people are working, and one of them is Chris Doering. Chris, you're off to Charlotte once again.
Yeah, kind of the culmination to the season as we wind down the 2018 college football season. Man, hard to believe it's over with, but I'll get a chance to go back up to Charlotte on Friday night and then do some shows over the upcoming days, including one on Saturday. It's a little unique. I don't know, what Gator fans' preferences are, but we're going to be doing a goal line show on the SEC Network starting at noon, where me, DJ Shockley, Tori Gurley from South Carolina, and Peter Burns will be sitting around kind of watching the game, talking about the game. So you can watch us watching the game, talk about the game if you want a little alternative programming.
Watching ball and talking about watching ball. So that should be fun. That's what we like to do. I don't know about you, but I disconnect when there's not major games. I sort of have a hard time it's like reading a book and putting it down for a week and going back saying, now where was I on this?
Yeah.
I don't know about you, if that's maybe your concentration's better, but it's taken me a bit to get back in the groove.
Yeah, I think it's taken a little bit to kind of get cranked back up, and as I'm starting to get ready to talk about SEC games again, we have 11 of them over the next 6 days.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I've kind of let my mind wander a little bit. You're not as sharp on some of the names. You're not as sharp as some of the storylines just because it's been about 4 weeks since we were really heavy into it. But with that being said, it'll be nice to go ahead and have the opportunity to get some of the SEC teams playing in the bowl games, because as you mentioned, it's just not quite as exciting unless there's teams that we're familiar with that are taking part, and that'll get cranked up on Thursday night as Vandy and Baylor take on one another out in Houston.
Finally, a few SEC games here to watch, and I wondered why I was having problems getting interested. Let me bounce something off of you. This team, albeit a very good team and an excellent coaching job by Dan Mullen and his staff, is odd in the respect that you don't have a real superstar. You don't have a dynamically popular player. You don't have someone that people go to the ballpark saying, boy, I want to see that guy do this. I mean, nothing against the guys who are doing it well as a team. They wouldn't have won all those games, 9 games, if they weren't doing it right. In many ways, it's a coach's dream. But having said that now, I sat down and tried to come up with 3 or 4 names in the Gators. So I said, all right, who's a really popular and people that you'd want to follow? And I would have a hard time coming up. I can come up with an MVP or two, but no one dynamic personality or star that's somebody that I'm going to be following closely. Am I wrong about that?
No. I mean, think about that, though. Historically, there's a certain couple positions that we look at as guys that have star power, with the quarterback being maybe the biggest focal point of any team. We know that Felipe Franks has had some up and downs throughout the season. Dan Mullen's found a way to make him productive in the way they've utilized him over the last couple of weeks of the year, particularly in the run game. So, I don't think he necessarily gets everybody excited. I think you look at the receivers. That's another position that you kind of look to for somebody that makes you kind of hold your breath a little bit. And Florida just has not, over the last few years, lived up to the potential that I think they have at that position. And some of it has to do with blocking. Some of it has to do with who's been at quarterback. But I don't think you have that dynamic there. And then at the running back position, you really probably have the best concentration of talent on the offensive side of the ball. But it's been dispersed because you're splitting carries between 3 or 4 different guys. So I think you're right about that. Defensively, as you look at it, Ja'Kai Polite is a guy that you may have that sort of feel about, but just really hasn't consistently done it throughout the entire year. I know the coaches were ultra high on him heading into the season and kind of took him a little bit to get warm, to get going, but he's kind of finished the season up right. So, yeah, I would agree with you on that, but I think that further speaks to the coaching job that Dan Mullen and his staff have done in maybe having these guys play as a team and not as a bunch of individuals, and the fact that they've maybe overachieved with a chance to win 10 games without that star power that you mentioned.
Exactly, and there's some interesting players and players I like and follow. But I mean, you mentioned Polite. We obviously have C.J. Henderson, and we could go on with David Reese and on B. But usually the offensive guys are the stars. Mm-hmm. Usually, and when you have a Tim Tebow as the bar, you look around and say, okay, now who is somebody that I can really jump all up? And the quarterback position, as you mentioned, is not one where there's been a lot of peace and harmony and kumbaya stuff going on there. Yeah. But I'm looking at a couple names, and I admit I'm an offensive person, but I throw out a couple of names.
Not offensive. You're not an offensive person. You're just an offensive person.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So I'm a big fan of the Michael Piran, which we talked about a lot this year. Mm-hmm. I think we've enjoyed watching Van Jefferson bring his game in. I love me some Kadarius Toney. I can't wait to see when he learns out where he's supposed to be and what he's doing. I like Freddie Swain. He's not a star.
He's come on.
Yeah. So, and then Chauncey Gardner hit a little bump in the road with his comments here about a month ago, and I think he got that back on the right track. And then throw in Brad Stewart here, but there really is still no dynamic personality. Now the good news is most of them are coming back, and they have more time to develop. So, any of those names strike your fancy?
Yeah, I mean, all of them strike my fancy. I mean, I think there's a lot to like about all of those guys. But at the end of the day, I'm excited about the overall prospects for next year and what this team is capable of, given what they did this year. Another year to acclimate in the offseason program with Nick Savage. Another year to get comfortable with the schemes that Todd Grantham and Dan Mullen are utilizing on their respective sides of the ball. You add in some some talent from a really good recruiting class that could get even better come February, that we expect to get even better with some big time names in play. So I'm really excited about the future, and I think that it'll be interesting to see if Ja'Kai Polite elects to return next year, because I think that's a big piece of that defense, having outside linebacker defensive end type that can rush the passer and demand as much attention as what he demands. It makes the rest of the defense and the defensive front that much better around him.
Well, and also you have to keep in mind that you don't catch these good teams in a down mode forever. Sooner or later, Vanderbilt's going to bite you. And you can't take for granted that FSU's not going to be, not going to be good for a while. You can't always, as we found out, you can't always count on Kentucky being an easy mark for you. So it's a good time for Florida, although the SEC East is getting much better. We saw it jump up this year, and certainly in some positions, some teams can rival the West. So that's something. It's all cyclical too, and you got to make sure you take advantage of those teams when they're down. Having said that, now is Dan Mullen set up for a run here?
I think he is set up for a run, and everybody talks about Georgia and what they've been able to accomplish. I look at this season though as hope for Florida. Even though they lost that game, that was a one-score game going into the fourth quarter, and this was probably as deficient of real talent as the Florida roster will be going forward. Meanwhile, we know what Kirby's been able to do in recruiting classes of late, stacking talent on top of talent. So I think that talent gap will narrow a little bit, and I think we're going to see some really good matchups between Florida and Georgia as things continue down the road. Specifically, that matchup within the matchup, the offensive mind of Dan Mullen against one of the best defensive minds in the entire country, and Kirby Smart, should be kind of fun to watch those things play out and that rivalry build over the years.
For sure, and I'm glad you brought that point, and this will end with this, and that is that think about that game. Go back and watch it with just under 11 minutes. Florida is in that game against Georgia.
Yep.
And everybody else played Georgia tight. They said, "Oh wow, look what a great job they did. They held Georgia to 2 scores or whatever." They never got proper credit, and but for a couple of those fluky mistakes that they made. This team was competitive with Georgia. Now, I said that to some people. They laugh at me. In that game, they were competitive, weren't they?
I will say that not only were they competitive, they were the ones that lost the game rather than Georgia winning the game. I mean, you look at the flea flicker on the first play of the game, should have been a touchdown had Felipe Franks not overthrown the wide-open receiver. You look at a couple turnovers down in their own end of the field that led to some Georgia points. Maybe one of the best goal line stands I'd ever seen. 7 or 8 plays down there at about the 1 yard line.
As good as I've ever seen by a Florida team, really. I've never seen a better one. Have you?
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen a better one either. So that was a game that could have gotten out of hand early, that Florida kept themselves in despite some mistakes that gave Georgia opportunities. And as you mentioned, a couple things down the stretch didn't go Florida's way. But I think if there's ever such thing as a moral victory, that had to make Florida's players and more so the Florida coaches happy about what the future holds if they were able to come up with that type of effort and that type of competitive game, given where the disparity in talent is on these two rosters right now.
Chris Doering, he'll be behind the mics, in front of the camera, and all that kind of good stuff. Got a whole bunch of folks talking ball on the SEC. Be sure and check. Are you coming on between games too, right?
Yeah, no, you know what? Actually, we don't have any games on our network, so we'll be doing that alternate broadcast on the SEC Network, 12 to 4 on Saturday, and then we're on New Year's Eve. Man, I get to spend my New Year's Eve in the studio. I think I get off the air at 11 that night, and then we'll do another wrap show at the end of the night on January 1st with all the New Year's Day Bowl games.
Not RAP rap, but WRAP rap, right?
Well, we might throw some rap in, too. I'm not afraid to rap on the air. Peter Burns lost a bet with me earlier in the season on our radio show where LSU lost the game to Florida, and he had to put a rap together praising the Gators. So, we might not be afraid to rap a little bit, too.
You guys have fun. You do a good job, and you have fun, and it's been a fun year. Having a chance to have you on the show, and we'll catch up to you after the new year. And thanks so much for your time, Chris.
Yeah, buddy, that sounds good. Enjoy it all the time. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Chris Doering.
Hi, man.
Getting ready to do some rap? No, he didn't say rap, did he? No, whatever he said. Yeah, that was it. All right, Chris Doering here checking in with us, and he's on his way to Charlotte, where you're already say if you're watching those games. Let's do this. let's go ahead and do a quick commercial mention and get on the phone to our friend Mark Lomg of the Associated Press and get his take on things.
Job-related accidents create incredible stress on your finances, your relationships, and most importantly, your sense of well-being. When the adjuster is not approving benefits you're entitled to by law, you need Dan Hightower to help you understand all of your legal options. Daniel L. Hightower has been fighting for accident victim justice in Ocala and statewide since 1976. Call Daniel L. Hightower today to better understand all your legal options. 352-629-7777.
Daniel L. Hightower, lawyer, fighting for accident victim justice since 1976. I mentioned earlier Rensstar, sponsor of this show, and certainly they do a lot in the community for the community as well as people in it. And I can't say enough about their organization. They are big sponsors of the high school program, the Scott Brantley Trophy. They have been involved all year long on the Rensstar Star of the Week. They'll be involved down the road to help support football, the Ocala Quarterback Club. And meanwhile, they also have a terrific reputation as a high-quality, patient-centered clinical research laboratory. And they're researching things like some treatment for Alzheimer's, psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraine, headaches, and fibromyalgia, looking for solutions to these deadly illnesses which cause so much grief and problems for people in our community. And they're doing it at a high level and under the supervision of the FDA, and they're looking for people who might want to join. You can contact them by calling 352-629-5800 or go on www.rensstar.net and find out what you can do if you want to be a part of this. They'll also have evaluations for memories if you want to get some help there. If you've been having memory loss or regardless if you've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or anything else, you can be possibly eligible for one of the current enrolling clinical research studies. So contact them today to find out if you, in fact, are eligible. Rensstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. All right, so all these games coming up and get ready to get busy. We're going to, this will be the most intense part of the bowl season for Florida fans, and of course it's also the national semifinals having a little something to do with that. And it's certainly, I'll be glued to the screen all day Saturday, starting with the noon kickoff of Michigan and Florida, and then of course coming back for the national semifinal games after that. So, and then of course we'll have another game for the championship. So I'm not sure about you.
Your call is forwarded to an automatic
sounds like Mark may not be available at the moment. We'll try him a little later.
4 6.
So I'm asking the question: are you going to be willing to take a shot? Of course, you don't. If you're not playing money, it doesn't matter. But are you going to? Would you have the guts to take the points? Do you take Notre Dame into points? Would you take Oklahoma? I don't see where people think that's a slam dunk. I don't quite get that. And I know it's because Alabama has a good defense. Some people think that maybe they can slow down Kyler Murray. They're not going to be able to stop him. That's been proven. And, of course, the fact that Murray's been injured or should be out, not injured, didn't come to the presser earlier or yesterday in the press conference. And they say he's back now. Meanwhile, Tua, they're saying is 85%, so it looks like we will see him. And so some of the quarterbacks are dinged up. We'll get a hold of Mark here in a minute and see if we can get his take. Mark is more of a journalist, a guy, as opposed to an opinion. A guy who writes opinions, he gathers facts. In fact, I think this is Mark right now. Let's see if we can reach I believe that is Mark right there as we speak.
A minute late.
Yeah, that's okay. We're good. I just want to make sure I didn't miss you, man.
No.
Understand that. How you doing, by the way?
Doing well. How about you?
Well, I'm tuckered out.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, same to you. Yes, I'm kind of tuckered out. Too much eating and too much sleeping. That'll get you. I don't know if the football doesn't get you.
That's a great weekend.
Yeah,
great week.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Mark. So now we got the game is on. We have talked to Chris Doering. He reminded me today that we've got 11 SEC teams playing in 6 days. So it's big boy football is here, right?
Oh, no doubt. These are the games. Can the SEC, which typically plays up in the bowl games, if you look at the matchups, it's usually, the fifth place SEC team versus the third place team from another conference, or the eighth best SEC team versus the fifth best team from another conference. So it's a little challenging for the SEC, but they usually end up with a better bowl record than most everybody else, and a winning record. So, this will be the challenge coming forward. Yeah, Vanderbilt's on now, right?
Yeah, I think yes. I forget trying to remember the names of the bowls. I just have to remember that. Yes, Vanderbilt's on right now. We'll see how. But you'd like to kind of see some teams, put exclamation points on their season. Of course, there wouldn't be much of an exclamation point in Vanderbilt's case. But hey, 7-6 is a whole lot better than 6-6. So it's funny how much better it looks when you're in the bottom looking up, as opposed to people say, well, those 6-6 teams, they shouldn't be playing. But when you're struggling to get out there and get your program going, that one win and extra practice helps a lot. So a little bit of news today, nothing that shocked us. First of all, the 3 Clemson players are going to be suspended, so that's done, like we thought. And then there have been a few dings here and there. Dexter Lawrence is out, and 2 other guys, I can't remember their names. And by the way, did it bother you that the First Responder Bowl was a no-show?
Yeah, I mean, that was unbelievable. I spent a lot of time yesterday ranting over in Jacksonville at the Jag with colleagues. I was just ranting a little bit about that. I think it's an unbelievable slap in the face. I think it's embarrassing that the bowl came out and publicly said all sales are final for tickets. They don't have any. They did not yesterday, initially anyway, have any plans to refund these tickets for all these people. And I think the 2 teams came out and said, well, we want to do something for the people who traveled to the bowl and bought tickets. So we're going to keep that open and see what. But to me, I don't know what you can do at this point. I mean, these are people who spent their holiday, this was their holiday gifts for people, this, that, and the other. They take holiday time off, and they travel out there for a bowl game that doesn't go down. And it's like, you're not going to refund their hotel and all that, and their gas or their airfare. Mm-hmm. And I get that that's impossible, but boy, the bowl and these teams ought to be bending over backwards. And you would think somebody would have had insurance on this bowl game. Either the bowl game had insurance that would pay out for lost revenue and pay all these people back, or the schools would have some sort of lost revenue insurance, or the conferences, whatever it be. But something here is amiss, and something's not right. Yep. Somebody's going to get screwed on this thing, and it looks like it's going to be, Joe Taxpayer.
Well, Boston College did issue a statement later today saying that they would get their choice of any 3 events. Of course, one of them can't be football at Boston College. Of course, that's like the old joke about, what's first prize, a trip to Philadelphia. And what's second prize? How's it go? 2 trips to Philadelphia. So who wants? Let's be honest. Boston College is not a hot ticket right now. But anyway, it just has a funny ring to it. The first responders, you think all good things about, and they had nothing to do with this. But it just sounds funny to
Right.
say, well, the first responders didn't respond, which of course has nothing to do with it, but it just doesn't seem like it didn't fit, something's wrong there. All right, so let's talk a little ball here. I was asking Chris Doering this question, that is it hard for you to pick back up on the storylines once you've left them for 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever? Is it hard to get back into the rhythm of the Florida Gators and what they're doing? I mean, how do you keep your narrative going?
Yeah, I don't know that it's hard because we're not really away from it for very long, if at all. I mean, it seems like it was just 2 weeks ago we had a bowl press conference, where the Chick-fil-A bowl people came out. We got Mullen, and then last week we get Mullen for signing day. So you're still, you still got Mullen. You still got these storylines are continuing, even though it's a little bit different with signing day thrown in the middle, and that kind of, detracts for a minute. But then you come back, and to me, it's pretty easy to pick up right where you left off. Especially since the main storylines haven't changed. Who's going pro? What's Dan Mullen got in store for with 3 weeks off, 4 weeks off, whatever it is. What is Emory Jones's role change? You going into the spring, it'll be the same thing. Emory Jones, Felipe Franks. What happens there? What happens with Kyle Trask?
Yeah.
Who goes pro? That's the big story for the next 15 or so days now. We find out, is it going to be, we know Chauncey Johnson is headed pro, is going pro, but what about
Jakai
Juwan Taylor?
Yeah.
Those guys, Voshawn Joseph is a name you've seen in draft boards for a second rounder, and you got to wonder whether he, makes a run at this thing now, while his name's hot. So, all those guys, and that storyline's not going away until they decide. And every day now it seems like a new potential first round pick is withdrawing from the bowl. I think today it was Georgia cornerback DeAndre Baker, where he's now not going to play in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah,
and that you and I have talked about that. I think 2 weeks in a row, and I just think it's an awful trend that somebody's got to get in front of and stop it before it becomes a real epidemic.
Yes,
it's definitely a problem now, but it's going to get to the point where some bowl's going to get really out of whack because they're going to bring a team in thinking, hey, they got the best quarterback in college football, maybe the top pick in the draft, and all of a sudden after bowl day or bowl assignments are divvied out, this guy's going to bail on the bowl, and you're going to be sitting there stuck with, a freshman making his first career start in a bowl game.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to want to watch it.
Yeah. And we're already marginal now as it is. I think we're seeing the first wave of bowl games. I think we got like 18 games left or something now. 11 SEC teams are involved. And it's hard to sustain, well, your friend Edgar told me when he arrived in Atlanta, Edgar Thompson's on the show, he said he was the only Florida media guy, and he was getting personal invitations from the Peach Bowl people because he was the only Florida media guy in the building. So they're not turning out en masse like they used to when they go for 4 days and 5 days at a time. So the storyline...
Well, a lot of that too is the timing.
I understand.
The timing of it.
I know.
The Gators, it hasn't been very many bowls where the Gators are traveling before Christmas. Usually they're a team that travels on the 26th or 27th for a January 1st bowl or whatever, and just the weirdness of the bowl setup, I think, is part of that. Yeah. But
something's got to be done there for sure. So, all right. So, you have any good hunches on any games? Any game coming up that you say this is a game that gets my attention? Aside from the obvious ones, the ones that two national semifinals and the Gators, because we covered the Gators. Is there one game or one team or one player that intrigues you in this remaining 18 games?
Well, I think all. I'm partly because I cover the Jags, and partly because it's the most important position in football. But I'm drawn to quarterbacks right now because the Jags are in the market for one. So I watched the Duke kid today, Jones, and And then I'm interested to see the Gator Bowl. Ryan Finley. Certainly want to watch Ohio State and see what Dwayne Haskins does.
Yeah.
I'll still go watch Justin Herbert in Oregon, even though he's going back to school.
He's hot right now. He's really hot.
Yeah, and he's a guy, who projects to be the top quarterback next year. And so, I want to watch him. We don't get to see a lot of Oregon because of the West being on the East Coast, and those games usually start pretty late. So to me, I'm drawn to the quarterbacks. Kyler Murray, another one who's going to have the option to play baseball, football. See what he does, watch him play. And so those guys, that's to me, Will Greer's another one. So those are the Duke kid, Will Greer, the NC State kid, Finley, Kyler Murray at Oklahoma, Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State, and Justin Herbert at Oregon. Those are kind of guys you look at and you go, okay, they're going to be first, maybe second round picks, but those are the guys I'm drawn to, and I definitely want to watch. Everybody else, it's hit or miss. I don't put a lot of stock in bowl games. I mean, I think you can do wonders. I think we go back to the Birmingham Bowl a few years ago where Dante Fowler dominated that game, had 2.5 sacks, and really rose up the ranks in the draft and was third overall by the Jags. Earned himself a lot of money playing in that bowl game and playing really well. So you can see some of those. But a lot of times, I think the bowl games are a little overrated from that standpoint. But you certainly can watch a quarterback and how he's throwing the ball and what he's doing against better competition, which you're going to face in a bowl, and in interconference competition where you're facing other conferences. That to me can be fairly telling.
Yes. Well, we haven't heard too much about any coaching changes now. That's kind of quieted down. One thing the early signing day has done a little bit is that schools know they got to keep their coaches in place. So I think that has quieted down, or they either go early and make their commitment, and by the way, then the schools have got to make their firings earlier too. So everything's escalated. So because there is no real second signing day. It is the signing day, and you get to rearrange the decks of the Titanic in a few places and do things differently. So, that's taking a little bit of the intrigue. But we still don't know for sure until the final bell it goes off and we find out people are staying, because there will be more changes. And the pros are firing guys too. So, all right, so size up. Everybody tells me Michigan is no way Michigan loses this game. And I look at it like, okay, here's why I think that might be wrong. I'm not saying they necessarily will. Number one, Mullen's teams play better as underdogs. All right, they just do. Number two, Mullen's good when he has enough time to plan. Number three, Michigan has 4 or maybe 5 now guys who are skipping the bowl game. Now, bowl games are all about wanting to win and want to play hard. It doesn't sound to me like Jim Harbaugh has got the consensus of the team in terms of wanting to win this game. It's a great program. It's got a great tradition, and I know that Harbaugh's a very good coach. But I'm not ready to go sell out on Michigan. And if I were gambling, I sure wouldn't sell out on it. What is your take on this, Florida's chances versus Michigan?
I said it to you before, and I'll say it again. I'll say it to anybody who wants to listen. I think Florida's got a great shot. And not to take anything away from Jim Harbaugh, who has clearly proven himself to be a very good coach, even though he hasn't beaten your good friend Urban Meyer. But to me, I look at this thing as you got a team that missed out on a bowl game last year, got a lot of guys looking to go pro or looking to put something on tape, something big in their final season. So to me, I think Florida's got a lot of energy, a lot of desire to win this game. And then on the Michigan side, you got 2 guys who aren't even two big-time players who aren't even going to play in terms of Gary, the defensive tackle, and then the 5th-year senior offensive tackle, Juwan, Bushell Beatty. And he's the 4th Miami starter who's elected, or 4th Michigan starter who's elected to skip the game. So Michigan, they care so little about this game that 4 guys are skipping the game.
Right.
Florida has the same number of guys going pro, same number of guys,
but they're not skipping the game.
Considered top picks, and they're all playing.
Yeah,
so to me, that says a lot. It says a lot about the motivation and the desire to play and play for your teammates and show up. And so to me, when you look at these two teams, one team wants to be there and is hungry to be there and wants to, go out and win, and the other team is kind of going through the motions, if you look at it. And so from that standpoint, I'm going to go and bet on Dan Mullen. I think what we've seen this year is Dan Mullen is out-schemed a lot of opposing coaches. That's how he's gotten, to 9 wins. They out-schemed LSU. They out-schemed Mississippi State. So you give him a month and a lot of time and a lot of preparation and 15 practices, I think he's going to have something for Michigan.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to bet on this one, I'm going to bet on Florida showing up and playing well and coming out with a W.
Good stuff from Mark Lomg, the Associated Press, kind enough to join us every now and then here and grace us with his presence. Have a happy new year and enjoy the rest of football season before we start doing basketball, which I guess we're doing now, right?
Yeah. I saw tonight they had a kid transfer. Chase Johnson is leaving the program, so I don't think anybody's going to miss him. But interesting timing to
it is
to come in and leave. And he's had some concussion issues, so hopefully he finds greener grass elsewhere.
We wish him the best, and as we do you, Mark, thanks so much.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
All right, thank you. Mark Lomg, the Associated Press, who covers real news. That's to cover the facts and cover the games and what have you. So, we're going to step up here and hear from. Every now and then we step outside the program, and we take a look at some other pro teams, and of course one of them is Notre Dame, which is got a chance. I talked to a guy today. He said, "Don't sleep on Notre Dame. They're better than you think." And so we tend to say, "Well, they didn't have any 5 stars. They didn't have this." We'll see. Let me tell you about Center State Bank real quick. Folks, it's my bank, and I've been there for, 7, 8 years now. And number one, if you just went there because of the building, it's worth going and joining, being a member of the bank, having a bank account there because of those wonderful facilities of that building over there on Silver Springs Boulevard. Terrific place to have a community event. And it looks something like something out of Gone with the Wind, as I've said many times. But there's more to it. That is that they have terrific banking facilities, and their service is extraordinary. If you don't know about them, you should find out about them. You can go online, go to centerstatebank.com, and if you're not in this area, there are plenty of them around. There are 82 locations in 30 Florida counties. You can find out the one closest to you by going to centerstatebank.com. Find out what they mean when they say Center State Bank, centered on community and customer service. In Ocala, if you want to reach this building, call 352-368-6800. Center State Bank, centered on community and customer service. All right, just a couple more messages before we go back and let me just do this real fast. I'll get this rolling. This is when you're the one who's doing your own producing, right? Grinders, one of my favorite places. If you've been listening to the program, you know that I highly recommend this place as some place to go and shop for clothes for you or your friends or your loved ones or whatever. You can buy your kids' clothes and your dad's clothes in the same building. It's been a tradition for 62 years in Ocala, and they have passed it on through several generations outside the family. David DeSantis now is the owner-operator, and they give you great service. This good-looking guy on the top right up here, that's when I ordered my new sport coat for my little deal I did with the Ocala Symphony Orchestra, and David gave me the samples and ordered it and had it tailored and all that in a matter of days and did a terrific job. I love the jacket. I also love the fact I can go into Grinders and say, "Can you suit me up here? I need a little help. I have a budget of this, and I need something in a gray suit or something, and they will find 2 or 3 of different jackets and say, try these and see which one you like. And if it doesn't fit, they'll alter it, they'll tailor it to make it fit. So, and it's just a good place to go. It's a good place to hang out if you didn't buy clothes here. So if you haven't been there, you need to go. 405 East Silver Spring Boulevard in Ocala. I'm sure they're going to have some good after Christmas sales later on. Most of their sales come later. They have a couple of big ones like on 4th of July, etc. So go in and ask for David or Brandon or whatever and tell them what you're looking for and find out why people like myself have been customers, grinders for generations and wouldn't think of not going back to grinders. Grinders of Ocala. All right, let's see if we can get back to work here and talk to get my friend John. Hang on a second, John Fineran. Here, let's see if I can roll him in here. Sometimes it just wants to play hard to get, and that's what happens. All right, earlier tonight we talked to John Fineran, the AP, and we asked him to coach us up some on Notre Dame. A brief interview. Here it is. All right, John Fineran from the AP in South Bend. A lot of people thought the Fighting Irish wouldn't be here, and yet they're down to 4, and the Fighting Irish had the unenviable task of playing a really good Clemson team, although the news is trending right now in Notre Dame's favor. First of all, belated Merry Christmas to you, John Fineran, and happy New Year's coming up.
Thank you, buddy. Same to you and your family. And, it's unseasonably warm here today. So if it hadn't been raining, I'd be hitting a golf ball somewhere in South Bend.
Well, you're getting ready to watch a team that nobody thought would be there is in fact there, and a triple header for me because I'll be obviously following the 2 national semis. We got Clemson, Notre Dame in the afternoon. At nighttime, of course, we've got the one that some people think are the de facto national championship game in the Oklahoma-Alabama game, and of course that game that matters to people down here. That's the Chick-fil-A Bowl in Atlanta, Peach Bowl, and that would be the Florida Gators and the Michigan Wolverines. And John, I read a story today about how if they projected championship teams on recruiting classes, Notre Dame would not be in that bunch.
Well, and again, Notre Dame, you're talking about 3 schools that probably are higher than Notre Dame in the rankings, buddy. But it's you've been down the road enough and know that it ain't. The recruiting classes look good. It's what you do with them when they get on campus.
Exactly.
And Notre Dame has done Notre Dame's. All you have to do to look at Notre Dame is you look at their quarterback, Ian Book, who was pretty much a guy that was not highly recruited. He was going to go to Washington State, and and Notre Dame took a chance on him, and all of a sudden a couple of things happened ahead of him. Kaiser turns pro, and he's all of a sudden number 2. And then last year at the Citrus Bowl, he brings Notre Dame back against a good LSU team, and they beat LSU on a book to Boykin, Miles Boykin touchdown pass, one-handed grab by the kid. And all of a sudden, and he beats. He doesn't beat out Brandon Wimbush, but the 3rd game of the season, they decide that they've got to go to Book because he can get the ball in the hands of the playmakers. So here's a kid who was lightly recruited, who's now he's on the cover of Sports Illustrated in the college football playoff issues that are out on the newsstand right now.
Yeah, and the former quarterback I hear is transferring.
Yeah, and Brandon Wimbush is going to transfer after this season. They've talked about how this guy has been a very good teammate after he got the word that they were switching quarterbacks there. And to Brandon's credit, he stayed in there and actually had to play against Florida State because Book was out with an injury,
and did well,
and won the game, and kept him on course. And so he decided that he wants to go elsewhere with his last year's eligibility left. So I'm sure Notre Dame will let him go with a lot of fond memories, especially if they can win Saturday and then maybe have a chance for the national championship.
I would have thought. And a team you're very familiar with, the Florida Gators, you covered them for a number of years too. And if I said to you, well, let's see, 2018, Notre Dame and Florida are going to lose 3 games to train them. You say, what? No way. And Florida had a little bit of a rough patch there, a couple of games. But now Dan Mullen got it going the right way. And certainly we know Brian Kelly did the job because he was named Coach of the Year. And I don't think Mullen was even in the running. But he certainly did. Down here, he was Coach of the Year. So, all right, so talk to me about this team. And we got about a minute about what you expect out of them against a really very good Clemson team who has a little bad news in their camp. Some of the positive drug tests that came back.
Yeah, and of course that's on their that's the Lawrence kid on their defensive line. They have, and he's not even the All-American. There's 2 other guys on their line who are the All-Americans.
Good point.
And they're very good up front, and that's going to be a challenge for Notre Dame's offensive line, which of course lost the 2 offensive linemen to the NFL first-round draft last year: Quentin Nelson, Mike McGlinchey. And so they've been rebuilding, and then during the course of rebuilding, they lost the 3rd guy who was probably number 3, Alex Bars, with a knee injury against Stanford. So it's been a work in progress. They've by having Book, it's helped them because Book has escapability in the pocket. But that's who they're going up against, and of course Notre Dame has to see if they can stop the freshman and the running back, the freshman quarterback and the running back for Clemson with their defense, which I think is a lot of people don't know this, but I think Notre Dame has a very, very under the radar kind of defense. They'll
glad to hear from John. I just wanted to share a personal message with you here that today was a tough day for our house. We had to say goodbye to a family friend for almost 16 years, Rennie. We had to take him to the vet and put him down today. He's had a long illness. I know many of you have had pets, and when you lose a pet, it's always hard. And this one was a tough one for my children and my grandchildren and I. And we made the decision yesterday to do what we knew was ultimately coming. And just want to say he was a good dog and a good pal and a good friend. So I just want to share that information with my G&K family. We're okay with it. We're sad, but we'll remember him fondly. And there he is, a little dog that came to us when he was 5 pounds and only about 9 when he was put down. So just say R.I.P. to our buddy Rennie, all right? Thank you for letting me share that. We're going to see now if we can't reach out and get Terry Norvelle from College Sports Today. And let's see here what we can do with Terry. I'm going to try to reach him on his Skype if all goes well and get his take on things to set the table for this game. I don't feel a lot of steam right now for this particular game for some reason or the other. But, it's what somebody just posted a minute ago saying that the Michigan only sold 8,500. Wow. I know Florida didn't sell too many. So it's not going too well at the gate. And again, one more indication that we have too many bowl games and too many bad bowl games. And by slimming this thing down and by having better games, it would resolve, or at least possibly help resolve, the fact that there's limited interest, that the people don't want to go to mediocre games, and it's not a novelty to go to a bowl game anymore because there's so many of them. So consequently, I think that it will take care of itself ultimately, but it's also wasted time and wasted money, and you see things happen like we saw with the First Responders Bowl and those things happening. So there's got to be a better way, right? I think we could sit down over a hamburger one afternoon and probably come up with a way to make the games more meaningful and to have, like we said before, maybe what you do is you just say, look, we don't have that many games, but anybody who gets a 500 record is going to be allowed to have the practice days. And then you just have to figure out, which of the best teams are going to go and make them worthwhile. So I think there's a way. I'm trying to reach Terry Norvelle now. I don't know if I've got him or not. T-Mac, how are you doing? I was dialing you on Skype but not getting you. So,
yeah, I'm fired up on Skype.
Okay, well, can you dial my number? Because I just called you. All right, I'm going to hang up my cell phone and try again, all right?
Okay.
All right, man. Okay, Terry Norvelle having a few problems on the other. This happens. It happens all the time in terms of when you're trying to reach people and you're flying blind. But it works most of the time. And people are just learning Skype like Terry is. Then when you get a little bit of a glitch, you have to go at it again. So let's see if this time we can get Terry to pick up for us there, and we'll get his take on things. He probably can fill us in on the tax slayer bowl too, since he's up in Jacksonville. So yeah, it's not connecting, Terry. We're not getting you there, buddy. So we'll have to go back to the old-fashioned way. Only got a few more minutes.
Hey, buddy.
Okay, you're not picking up, so we'll go less like this. Go ahead and go. Terry Norvelle from College Sports Today, and I got your picture up on the screen here. I'll get that information going. And how you doing, first of all?
Not bad, buddy. How are you, man? Bowl season.
It is, but I'm kind of getting a little bit fatigued with it right now. And you know me, I love football. I can't ever get too much. But I think I figured out why. And that is that only now are the big games starting with big boy football in the SEC tonight, And they're the national semifinal games, of course, the same day as the Gators play.
Yeah.
That'll be a good day. But I like football almost any time, but 20-something games to get started with is just not enough for me. And I thought I would love it, and I'm a little bit worn out on it. Yeah,
I'm with you. I kind of circled yesterday, Wednesday, the 26th is kind of my start date as well. Not to disparage the smaller teams or smaller bowls, but and then the networks just hammer the whole bowl season down your throat. So you are a little bit leery. Like I was yesterday. It kind of kicked off, and then you had a game canceled, which is weird. But I kind of called it. Yesterday was kind of the start of the Big Boy Bowl season, really.
Exactly, me too. It's the exact same. The tease is the same thing I did because it's well. Anyway, it seems like it needs a little juice right now, and I think we'll begin to pick it up. It's a weekend again, and I blame it on the fact that we had Christmas on a Tuesday. Just Christmas on Tuesday just messes everything up. I love Christmas, but man, I had a hard time getting my head around that. So, well, is anything, Terry, on your show you've been talking about any of the news? I'm sure you talked about the issues of players. Admissions got 4 guys now not playing, and some of the things going on with the Clemson program. Obviously, looks like now for sure Dexter Lawrence and the other 2 guys are going to be out. What's been capturing your listeners in recent days?
I'll tell you what got me was, my last show last week was midday Friday. We took the weekend off and Christmas Eve and Christmas. By the time we got back on Wednesday, my God, you had most of the stuff you mentioned happen. Even more Michigan players sitting out. You had the LSU shootout where unfortunately somebody lost their life, drug test. It has been a tough last week or so. Now the backdrop of all that, knock on wood, and I think we've made it through it. You could not have really made a more picture perfect bowl month for Florida. My God, barely a peep out of the Gators. They've gone, they did their stuff in Gainesville. They traveled to Atlanta. It's been just sugar and spice. The big story out of Atlanta and the Peach Bowl has been the Michigan players defecting. So gosh, on the backdrop of all this craziness has gone on the last 3 weeks. And it drives the coaches crazy because things get a little loose. Kind of like the summer. Things get a little loose this month in December. Here's Florida. My goodness. I mean, buddy, you've covered the Gators as long as anybody. There have been many bowl trips where, man, you can't wait for the kickoff because you don't want another scandal going on. It's for the Gators. It's been push button for Florida.
Yeah, Spurrier's been known to put players on the plane and send them home from,
remember that?
From New Orleans. So you're right. And I don't care what coaches say or what people say. They say, well, I can't blame them. They're sitting out the game. It's a business, and I get all that, and I can't say they're wrong. But who's minding the store here? And you pretty soon, I've said this several times. You got guys saying, well, our team's not going anywhere. We're 4-5, and I got a hangnail, and I got to get ready for the pros. I'm just going to quit, I think, and not play in these bowl games. Well, something's going to have to give. Either got to stop having games, or find a way to find people, or incentivize them with more money or something. Maybe they need to get a stipend for playing if they're in the bowl. I don't know. But
buddy, there was a really interesting discussion. Our buddy up here, Rick Catlett, who's run the Gator Bowl for a million years. He's as interwoven in big time college athletics and football as anybody. He was making a good point. He's happy with his game. He's got NC State and Texas A&M, pretty good draw. Right. But he made a point, and he said, these kids are making business decisions for themselves. But he said, kind of what you just said. This is a million, to some degree, hundreds of millions of dollar industry. And he said, for example, the Gator Bowl. He said the Gator Bowl goes in partnership with the SEC and the ACC and periodically Notre Dame. And the Gator Bowl, just using his example, he says, look, we go to that table with those attorneys and those contracts, and we are saying we're going to give you X million, Mr. SEC Conference, for one of your teams, and Mr. ACC, the same thing. Well, we're expecting, and he hated to use this word, but we're buying your complete team.
Yeah.
And then you get down, the bowls are having trouble getting people to travel and go to the games anyway. Yeah. And this trend, I don't see the genie going back in the bottle. Yeah, you wonder, man. I mean, it's hard to shell out money if you're not seeing Will Greer play quarterback voluntarily, not due to an injury, or if you're not seeing, Rashawn Gary and Devin Bush playing defense for Michigan. But yeah, Rick Catlett made a good point. He's like, there are a lot of people and a lot of entities buying, and I hate to say it, but it's a business, buying these programs and these conferences, and I don't know whose fault it is, but they're not delivering the goods that they bought.
No, for sure, I agree, and the model they may have to go to is college basketball, and then put everybody in the playoffs, and let them play it down. Yeah. That way, you got your team's got a chance.
Yeah,
maybe they're going to need to go to that super conference of 70 teams and drop those cupcake games and have the games that would make you want to have pride in your team, your school playing in the tournament. So I don't know. There's something not right there. It has to be. All right. So you want to give me some inside information and tell me who I should bet this week?
I would stay away from bowl games. I think bowl games are just so weird unless there's truly a championship on the line, such as the semifinals and then the finals. Buddy, you just don't know what the mindset is of programs and players. There are several examples. Georgia playing Texas. On paper, I think that would be a great game. Texas has gotten better every single week of the season. They've been fun to follow. Georgia, do they want to be there? Is it considered a downer for Georgia to be playing Texas? These bowl games, I would never want to bet on these bowl games because you just don't know how jacked one program is and how disappointed the other is.
Yeah, and you start seeing stories where players getting having so-called flu.
Yeah.
I wonder if they have that kind of flu that comes in a Jack Daniels bottle, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And anyway, it's going to have to. Well, T-Mac, enjoy the week. Enjoy the game. We'll catch up again after the bowls are over and sort it all out and talk a little about any. I'm kind of leaning toward Mullen and the upset with the points. I guess got a feeling that maybe we'll give him a few weeks and give him a chance to scheme it. And I know he's going to have some surprises in personnel. I don't know who, but and he's a good coach for a situation like that. So 6.5 points is maybe worth a flyer. I'm not going to bet any of the games, but I'm just saying. But if I'm saying that, I'm looking at, I got a good feeling about that. So could happen. So all right, my man, Terry Norvelle, College Sports Today. Tell them how they can get your show.
You can check us out on Facebook Live anytime. Just go on and like the page, College Sports Today. Like it up, and we'll goof around a little bit, have some fun. And as I get out of here, buddy, just so you'll know, and all your viewers, 247 days until kickoff college football 2019.
T-Mac's always got that counter going, so I like it.
You got it, buddy.
Hey, Terry, Happy New Year. Thanks for being on the show, bud.
You too. See you, bud.
Right. All right, it's going to wrap us up for tonight. Thanks to all of our guests. Thanks to all of our listeners and viewers. And we're going to have to say good night and have a good day. And tomorrow, don't forget, it's Football Friday. We're on the air at 11 o'clock tomorrow, so we'll talk to you then. Good night.